Major breaking news, multiple fronts in just a few hours from now. Bruce Orr, the twice demoted corrupt DOJ official at the very center of the deep state's effort to stop Donald Trump, is set to testify before Congress. Coming up, we will detail how Orr became a seedy central figure in what is the Destroy Trump movement. Plus, we have breaking news tonight, a new report from Sarah Carter showing how a government whistleblower allegedly punished after sounding the alarm on a strange $1 million contract given to a key player in the government's effort to surveil the Trump administration. This will blow you away. And also tonight, there's a new scary list circulating on Capitol Hill. It previews the Democrats' shocking post-election agenda. None of it is to help you. We have it. We'll share it with you. 71 days to go until the most important midterm election in our lifetime. It should serve as a warning to everybody. Protect what you voted for in 2016. And good news from the international front. The U.S. and Mexico have agreed to a strong new trade deal. What happened to the trade war? Meanwhile, the stock market is surging. The president's poll numbers remain steady despite last week's media hysterical breakdown. We're bringing all of that. Plus, we will honor the life of an American patriot. He was a hero. He served his country. John McCain with his longtime friend and colleague, Senator Lindsey Graham. Sit tight, buckle up. We start with our breaking news opening monologue. He was once the fourth highest ranking official in the Justice Department. An Associate Deputy Attorney General, Bruce Orr, cultivated a close relationship with former Clinton paid-for foreign spy, dirty dossier author, he doesn't even believe the dossier himself, Christopher Steele. And allegedly without the permission or knowledge of then-boss, Deputy AG Rod Rosenstein, Orr and Steele maintained a close relationship and contacts both before, during, and after the 2016 election. 2 weeks ago, right here on this show, we first showed you dozens of unearthed texts and emails and handwritten notes that detailed specifically how Orr and Steele worked together to spread the dirty dossier throughout some of the highest levels of our government, and to also spread lies, propaganda, disinformation to you, the American people, so you would vote for one person over another before the election in 2016. This contact between Steele and Orr continued even after the FBI caught all official ties with Christopher Steele because he was leaking to the press information he knew was not true. And of course, Bruce Orr knew that the dossier was in fact bought and paid for by the Clinton campaign and the DNC. He knew that Steele was doing Clinton's bidding as an opposition researcher for the group Fusion GPS with that funneled money through a law firm. He likely knew that the contents of the dossier were unverified at best. Now debunked most of it. Now, after all, Bruce Orr's wife, Nellie Orr, she worked with Christopher Steele at Fusion GPS, a massive detail that Bruce Orr failed to report to the Justice Department he worked for, while some of his colleagues used the contents of Clinton's dirty dossier as the basis for criminal investigations, and of course, lying in FISA court. Steele relationship was so seedy that in 2017, Christopher Steele expressed his concern over James Comey's upcoming testimony, writing to Bruce Orr, "Hi, just wondering if you had any news. Obviously, we're a bit apprehensive given scheduled appearance at Congress on Monday." That would be Comey's, hoping that important firewalls, plural, will hold. Thanks. Many thanks. Now, meanwhile, according to Bruce Orr's handwritten memos, Christopher Steele was, quote, very concerned about the Comey hearing and afraid they will be exposed. And other communications show Steele's efforts to reach the special counsel investigation, including Robert Mueller. In November 2017, Orr wrote to Steele, quote, "I have passed on the questions, apparently to the special counsel Mueller, but haven't gotten an answer yet." So Orr was actually feeding Steele's Russian lies to Bob Mueller and his Democratic donor witch hunters. And Steele later wrote back, quote, "I'm presuming you've heard nothing back from your SC special counsel colleagues on the issues you have kindly put forward in front of me. To say this is a disappointment is an understatement." So tomorrow's a big day. You, the American people, finally deserve answers. And during this hearing before Congress, Orr will appear before the House Judiciary and House Government Reform and Oversight Committees. It is important we get answers. These are just a few of the questions. What did Steele mean when he said, quote, hoping important firewalls will hold? What are those firewalls? Why was Steele worried about, quote, being exposed? Who in the DOJ knew that Steele was feeding information to Orr? Was Bruce Orr really working on the Russia probe without the Deputy Attorney General, Rod Rosenstein's permission or knowledge? Remember, Rosenstein signed off on the fourth FISA warrant. We knew by then the bulk of information was the phony Clinton bought and paid for dossier. Who in the special counsel investigation did Orr pass along Steele's issues to? And this is important. Did any FISA applications contain information from Orr's work with Christopher Steele? Was he working hand in hand with his wife, her employer, Fusion GPS? And what role did Nellie Orr play in this phony Russian dossier? Now, these questions to just the tip of the iceberg. New article in The Federalist outlines several important topics that also must be addressed. I know this has nothing to do with taxi medallions or bank loans or tax returns, but we'll update you on this real case of collusion tomorrow after the hearing. Now, also tonight, we have another breaking report that exposes potential corruption, again at the highest levels of your government. According to Sarah Carter, this is an interesting story. A defense analyst named Adam Lovinger was targeted and stripped, his security clearance gone. Why? Because he exposed what is a bizarre and strange $1 million contract between the Department of Defense and Stefan Halper. Now, who's Stefan Halper? You might remember Halper. He was the guy that the FBI used as the undercover, important, otherwise known as spy against the Trump campaign in the lead up to the 2016 election. It gets deeper. And according to Sarah Carter, and she'll join us in a minute, Lovinger raised concerns over Halper's diplomatic meetings with foreigners. And by the way, including Russians, something not allowed in his role as a contractor. We did reach out to Halper, the Department of Defense tonight. They haven't responded. Shocking. Now, we'll talk to Sarah Carter and Lovinger's attorney, Sean Bigley. They'll join us with more on this developing story. But first, we are currently tracking another huge developing story that could spell very bad news for Robert Mueller tonight. A federal court case stemming from a decades-old murder. They're actually set to decide whether or not information from grand jury investigations can actually be released to the public. Now, if the court finds that such information cannot be made public, that would mean Robert Mueller could be muzzled and prevented from releasing a report at the conclusion of his witch hunt when he writes a stupid report. Usually grand jury information is kept secret. And remember, only prosecutors get to make the case to a grand jury. In other words, there's no defense case before a grand jury. In America, you can't indict a ham sandwich. We're going to keep you posted on this case as arguments are set to begin next month. And meanwhile, we have yet another setback for anyone breathlessly hoping and praying for Mueller to find the Trump-Russia collusion that we've not heard to this point. The attorney for Michael Cohen, our old friend Lanny Davis, well, he's now backpedaling on his claim that Donald Trump knew about the now infamous 2016 Trump Tower meeting. This is a big deal. And Davis is now saying that he should have been clear. And now he cannot confirm that information that he had once confirmed. And CNN fake news reported. This raises another important question. Is Michael Cohen really being served well in this case by his attorney, lifelong Clinton ally, politically motivated against the president? Remember, it was Lanny Davis who said his client would never accept a pardon from President Trump. Okay, he'd rather serve 5 years in prison? That really was a bad thing for any attorney to say. We'll have more on that in a moment. But first, we're going to turn to the midterm elections. 71 days from tonight. You'll be tuned in. You'll be watching election results. You will decide. The power is in your hands, the future of this country. For months, we have been warning you about the Democratic post-election agenda. If they take back the House, they're coming for, they call it crumbs, the tax cut, but they still want the crumbs back. They said they will rescind President Trump's tax cuts. We know, and I've been saying forever, their number one goal, they won't tell you, but they want to impeach this president. How does Obamacare work out for you? Did you get to keep your doctor plan and pay less? They want to keep Obamacare. They want to block Kavanaugh from the U.S. Supreme Court. They want open borders. They want to abolish ICE. They want to kill off the deep state investigations and abuse of power that we have been exposing every night on this show. And according to a list first obtained by Axios, Congressional Republicans are now previewing a series of what will be investigations that Democrats will likely launch if they regain power in the House. By the way, if you look at the list, it's interesting. That list, nothing is about making life better for you, your family, the forgotten men and women in this country. None of it. And some are calling it a hell list for President Trump and his allies should they take back power in 71 days. Look at the list. It includes inquiries into the president's tax returns, family businesses, the president's dealings with Russia, James Comey's firing. Oh, Rod Rosenstein recommended it. Stormy Daniels, the travel ban, Jared Kushner, Ivanka, ethics compliance, hurricane response in Puerto Rico, and so much more. Look, keep that list rolling. Let this be a clear warning. If you don't vote in 71 days, if you don't understand what's at stake, and Republicans lose the House, I'm telling you right now, this is not my first rodeo. We were on this show, this network, when we launched in October 1996. I promise you, this will all happen. The Trump agenda will be stalled. Anti-Trump investigations will feed into the media frenzy that we now see ratcheting up every day. That's why I keep telling you, it's the most important midterm elections in your lifetime. If you voted for Donald Trump, you like the results of Donald Trump, then you better pay attention to this November, 71 days away, because that's what they want to do, and more. Without a doubt, the Trump agenda is working. Just today, the president announced a strong new trade deal with Mexico. This is a win for this country. Take a look.
We just signed a trade agreement with Mexico, and it's a terrific agreement for everybody. It's been in the works for a long time. It's an agreement that a lot of people said couldn't be done, and we did something that was very special. Great for our farmers, our workers, and our stock market just broke 26,000 for the first time ever in the history. So today we have the highest stock price we've ever had. And we're very happy about that. I said that was going to happen, and it's happened. Everything I said is going to happen. It ends up happening.
And guess what? Following that announcement, the NASDAQ jumped to a record high as our already surging economy continues to strengthen. Good day on the Dow as well. Record low unemployment rates across the board. Let's see, 14 states, record low unemployment for Hispanic Americans, African Americans, Asian Americans, women in the workforce. Youth unemployment is now at a, 40-year low. Consumer confidence at an all-time high. More jobs than we have people on unemployment available. A key reason why the president's approval rating, in spite of all of these vicious, vile, day-by-day, predictable media attacks, remains steady and strong, and subsequent impeachment obsession even after Michael Cohen and Paul Manafort last week. All right, we have a lot to get to tonight. Joining us now, the author of the New York Times 3 weeks in a row bestseller, The Russian Hoax. #1, the illicit scheme to clear Hillary Clinton, frame Donald Trump. Fox News legal analyst Greg Jarrett, and also Fox News investigative reporter, contributor Sarah Carter, and security clearance defense attorney Sean Bigley is with us. Sarah, let's start with your breaking news. It gets complicated, but at the heart of it, this is a really big case because Mr. Adam Lovinger, represented by Sean, who's with us, he basically was able to expose, and now you have seen the documents that say...
Well, he was basically able to expose Stephen Halper's. And remember, Stephen Halper was a professor emeritus at Cambridge who was the central player in the FBI's Crossfire hurricane investigation into President Donald Trump. And he was the man that the Washington Post and the New York Times, when they published their stories on Crossfire hurricane, he was the person that they didn't want to out, the name that nobody wanted to reveal out of fear, based on intelligence community warnings, Sean, that people could either be killed or that his life would be in danger if his name goes public. Well, eventually his name did go public, and that was Stephen Halper. And what we discovered was that he was actually involved in every aspect of the FBI's investigation.
Slow down
from
right
Carter.
there. I want you to explain why Halper is important. This is very... So we did have the case of the FISA warrants, but then we have the issue of spies in the Trump campaign. And yes, Stephen Halper explained
Yes, and Stefan Halper was prior to them taking on and asking the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court for that FISA warrant on Carter Page. He actually became acquainted with Page in July of 2016. He approached him. Page was invited to one of his Cambridge intelligence seminars, and that's where Page befriended Halper. And Halper and him became very close. And in fact, Halper was continuously asking Carter Page questions, asking him about his thoughts on Russia, asking him about this and that. And then later on in September 2000,
did the spy in the Trump campaign have connections to Russia?
Well, this is what's even more interesting. Stefan Halper has direct ties to Russian intelligence because at his Cambridge intelligence seminars, twice he invited the former head of Russian intelligence. He invited the Russians
to the seminars. He's a spy in the Trump campaign.
Absolutely.
And then Sean's client, Adam Lovinger, finds this information.
Well, accidentally stumbled on it. He was doing his job at the Pentagon. He was at net assessment. He was going through contracts, and he realized, hey, here's this professor who's basically getting over $1 million in contracts to write reports. I don't understand what's going on here.
$2,000 a page, your report said.
That's absolutely true.
It's a lot of money. Good work if you can get it.
Yeah, and nobody gets that money, Sean. That's almost impossible. I mean, this is something that was.
Stefan Halper is now then also, he has all his Russian contacts. He's getting paid $2,000 a page. He's working with the former CIA director of Obama, Hayden, correct?
Oh, yeah. We don't know that for sure. What we do know is that he was working with the Pentagon. There were direct links with high-level officials at the Pentagon, and that he was going overseas. He was making a lot of money, and he was conducting what appears to be diplomatic relations, which is forbidden under federal law when you're a contractor at the Pentagon. This isn't something that's part of your normal work routine. But let me bring up something really quick before you go to Sean. He is also directly connected, of course, to George Papadopoulos, and reached out to George Papadopoulos in September 2016, where he asked him, would you write a report for me? I'll pay you $3,000. Come to London. Let's talk. And then even more interestingly enough.
That sounds like poor Papadopoulos was set up.
Yes, that's exactly what Simona Papadopoulos, George Papadopoulos' wife, has said over and over again in interviews, saying that George was basically set up by Stefan Halper and another professor by the name of Joseph Misfud.
Part two is Carter Page in this story.
Yes, and so Carter Page, who develops a very close relationship with Stefan Halper, continues to email him, and according to the sources that we've spoken with and according to the reports written in the Washington Post and the New York Times, Stefan Halper was reporting back to the FBI information. But really quick, he also goes back to Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, and I don't want people to forget about this. In 2014, when Flynn was at one of these seminars and attended a dinner one night, it was Stefan Halper who not only invited Flynn, but also invited a Russian woman, but Lakova, and I hope I'm saying her name correctly, and it was Stefan Halper who allegedly spread the rumor, the disinformation campaign, that apparently Flynn had some kind of bizarre contact with her during that dinner.
Let me bring in Sean. Your client, Adam Lovinger, stumbles across this information. And by the way, Sarah, I know you've seen it. Sean, I know you've seen it. And that Stefan Halper is the nexus that drags in Papadopoulos, Carter Page, and General Flynn. And he's a spy, and literally a spy within the Trump campaign?
Sean, this is unbelievable. It's an absolute bombshell. And I will tell you this, what we have essentially learned is that Stefan Halper invited the Trump campaign officials into the lion's den. This was not a set of organic meetings. This was not Halper reporting things that he's witnessed that he thought were concerning as he has put out there in the media.
Documentary evidence.
We have an absolute ironclad document trail that shows that Halper invited the Russians, Halper foisted the Russians on the Trump officials at these meetings and at these seminars. So the spy that's looking for Russians is the one bringing the Russians into the campaign and surrounding all the people that have now gotten in legal trouble with Russians, the guy that the government put there. Is that a fair statement? This is a classic... Absolutely, Sean. This is a classic espionage tactic. You accuse the other side of doing what you are, in fact, doing, and that is the entire genesis of the Mueller investigation.
Has anybody like Jeff Sessions or anybody asked for this material?
This is breaking. This is today, Sean. This is brand new bombshell material.
Maybe they could watch our show and learn something. We found a lot of Russian connections. Hillary paying for Russian lies being spread as propaganda to the American people, Russian lies being used for FISA warrants. There's a lot of Russia here that have nothing to do with bank loan applications, tax returns, or taxi medallions. Greg Jarrett, let's go to you.
But they appear to have everything to do with the other side, Sean.
That's correct.
There's no question, but that there was a conspiracy afoot here, and that was to use people to insinuate themselves into the Trump campaign as spies, and in order to set up individuals as scapegoats, essentially, for the Trump-Russia collusion probe. You know, and the FBI is all in on this. They're paying for this.
Is this the insurance policy?
Oh, sure.
Is this where the firewall's holding? We don't want to be exposed. Right. Does that all come together?
Papadopoulos bar talk was never the precipitous moment for triggering the campaign, the election. It was the dossier, and the dossier was fabricated by a British spy being paid for by Hillary Clinton and the Democrats. Where is Jeff Sessions and Rod Rosenstein investigating that, which is clearly illegal?
And these, Sean Bigley, these documents will prove as such, correct?
Absolutely. Let me tell you briefly what they show. Number one, Stefan Halper co-led his series of seminars with a noted Putin apologist who spent a decade at the State Academy in Russia. Number two, Stefan Halper co-taught these seminars at Cambridge University with the former head of Russian intelligence. And number three, and perhaps most damning, Stefan Halper accepted funds from a front company for the Russian intelligence service, or what MI6 believes to be a front company for the Russian intelligence service. And he was the spy that was used to try and fight. Everything is boomeranged. I said this year's the year of the boomerang. I hope your client, this is going to be interesting. Let's see if Robert Mueller pays a little attention to something Russia. You know, maybe instead of bot companies and people he's never going to get in a courtroom, maybe he could pay attention now. If he cares about truth and real Russia collusion. All right, we'll follow the story. Thank you all for being with us. Congrats on the book, Greg. Sarah, great report. SarahACarter.com, Hannity.com if you want to read the whole report. By the way, it's long, but it's worth the read. When we come back, demoted DOJ official Bruce Orr is going to go face-to-face with lawmakers tomorrow behind closed doors. Catherine Herridge has a full report from Washington. And Alan Dershowitz, Andy McCarthy, as we continue straight ahead. All right, tomorrow, disgraced DOJ official Bruce Orr will testify on Capitol Hill behind closed doors. Fox News chief intelligence correspondent Catherine Herridge has a full report from Washington. Catherine.
Sean, Tuesday's interview behind closed doors will focus on Orr's decision to share information with the FBI from the former British spy Christopher Steele, after Steele was fired by the Bureau as a source. Investigators tell Fox News they also question whether the FBI knew about Steele's hatred of candidate Trump, as well as his briefings to the media about the Trump dossier. And if that's true, why the Bureau still used Steele's unverified research to secure a surveillance warrant on a Trump campaign aide. Russia was not part of Orr's official Justice Department job. Investigators are also drilling down on Orr and Steele's relationship with Glenn Simpson, whose firm Fusion GPS was paid by the DNC in Clinton campaign. Simpson employed Orr's wife. Today, a House Republican explained their strategy and leveled serious allegations.
Well, we want him to confirm what we already know from hard evidence, that he and his wife were part of a conspiracy to, in fact, create this narrative of involvement and wrongdoing by the president relative to the Russians. But we have a lot of evidence. Now the question is, can we get him to confirm the evidence, or will he deny the truth right before us in writing?
2017 text messages obtained by Fox suggest Steele also asked Orr to be his go-between with the special counsel Robert Mueller's team. A spokesman for Mueller declined to comment, and the DOJ had nothing to add, Sean.
All right, Catherine, thank you. And joining us now with reaction, author of another bestseller, The Case Against Impeaching Donald Trump, Harvard Law School professor Alan Dershowitz, and Fox News contributor Andy McCarthy. You know, I watched you out there, Professor and Andy. I watched you both last week, and it was great hysteria as the Manafort verdict came in and Michael Cohen's plea deal came in, and great speculation. Lanny Davis has backed off a lot of his comments, which is pretty fascinating. And Professor Dershowitz, you kept saying, this isn't even jaywalking as it relates to the president. Can you explain to America's dumb pundit lawyer class why you're right and they're so wrong?
Well, first, I completely understand why people are so anxious to try to find crimes against Trump, but you just can't make it up. You have to look at the rule of law. And if you look at the statute says that a candidate can contribute any amount of money he wants to his own campaign. And President Trump has said the money came from him personally. Also, there's an obligation to report, but the reporting obligation is on the treasurer of the campaign, not the candidate himself. So unless new evidence develops, I see no indication of any criminal violation of any of the campaign finance statutes. If there are any, let's hear, where's the beef? Where's the statute? Show me, point to me where the violation occurs. I know why people hope there's a violation, but hope can't substitute for reality.
Andy, I'd love for you to weigh in on this, and you come at this from a different point of view. 20 years in the Southern District of New York. Your track record is impeccable. I actually got to interview John Sayles, a former colleague of yours. He's brilliant. He's on your page. Rudy's obviously on your page. Where are the crimes here? You know, where?
Well, Sean, I think in the context particularly of the president, what is relevant here, especially because what we're talking about, given the Justice Department guidance, is impeachment, not indictment. The history of this set of statutes that Professor Dershowitz just referred to is that the two government agencies that are primarily responsible for enforcing them have come to contradictory conclusions about what a crime is. So you have, in the John Edwards case back about 5-6 years ago, you had the Federal Election Commission saying that these kinds of payments were not in-kind political contributions, and then the Justice Department turns around and indicts him on 6 felony counts, a case that the judge lets it go to the jury, but it ends in disaster for the Justice Department, 1 acquitted count and 5 hung jury counts. And my only point is, if the two agencies of government that are primarily responsible for enforcement can't even agree on what a crime is, how can you conceivably have a high crime?
I don't look. I've known Lanny for a lot of years. I like Lanny. I know Lanny loves the Clintons. He and I agree to disagree, but he said things that he had to back off of, you know, that were really important. My client says that the president knew about the infamous meeting at Trump Tower. The words in the plea agreement, Professor Dershowitz, with Michael Cohen at the direction of the president, that's all contradicted by even Michael Cohen's testimony before congressional committees. So,
but it's so confusing. It's so confusing because if it was at the direction of the president and the president agreed to pay it back from his own money, then it's a perfectly lawful, legitimate aspect of this. So I don't get why the Justice Department felt the need to add at the direction of the president. It put them in a catch-22. If it's at the direction of the president, then it's a campaign contribution from the president, which is perfectly lawful. All that was required was reporting, and the reporting would have happened after the election, so no harm, no foul here. I just don't get it. I've been teaching criminal law for over 50 years, and you just have to show me where the crime is. And I agree with my distinguished colleague that if you get two different agencies of the government disagreeing, you can't have criminal action. You know, Thomas Jefferson once said a criminal statute must be so clear that the average person can understand it while running. I can't even understand these statutes while sitting. How can you make them a basis for a criminal charge or an impeachable offense?
Last word, Andy.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I would just add to that, Sean, that what I'm disappointed about is the government and the Southern District of New York in particular usually goes out of its way to avoid naming an accused person until they're actually ready to put their money where their mouth is and formally accuse them under circumstances where they have all the due process protections that pertain to that. To go out of your way to name someone under these circumstances, it's just something I don't understand why they'd want to go out of bounds like that.
You know, I complained when they did that to Richard Nixon years and years ago. You don't name people as unindicted co-conspirators and give them no opportunity to respond in the court of law.
They never claimed Michael Cohen was part of a conspiracy.
No.
They didn't claim that.
No, because it'd be very hard to find a conspiracy here. It would be a conspiracy not to register. That doesn't seem like much of a conspiracy. It's a real stretch.
All right, good to see you both. Thank you. When we come back, the great one, Mark Levin, weighs in on this and more. Straight ahead. He is the host of CRTV's Levin TV, the host of Life, Liberty Levin, right here, Sunday night, the #1 show in its time slot on the Fox News channel. We call him the great one, Mark Levin. Mark, let's start with the president and the hysteria that came out last week. And the so-called experts have been so wrong the entire time.
Well, the president's actually in great shape when it comes to the law and when it comes to impeachment. On impeachment, all we have to do is vote and make sure the Democrats don't win, and then he won't be impeached. There's an idea. Anyway, that's the headline, though. The president is in very good shape. You cannot impeach a president on events that occurred before he was president. I don't know if people are aware of this. The precedent is Vice President Collier's case in 1873. Judges, different. Presidents, vice presidents, on events that occurred beforehand. So even if they load up their phony list, we ought to keep that in mind. Also, there's serious doubt on whether Mr. Mueller, in his report, can use grand jury information that goes public. Remember, grand juries are secret. Grand jury information is supposed to be secret. There's a big case going on now in Washington, D.C. relating to this. Congress passed a statute to keep this information secret because when an individual is in front of a grand jury, they don't have a lawyer. The other side can't be told. There's no counter to what the government's doing. So they're going to have a big hurdle, I think, to get over to even allow the information that's in front of a grand jury to get to the American people by way of Mr. Rosenstein, because that is a miscarriage of justice. What else? Obstruction of justice. I'm going through what they've been arguing. President cannot obstruct justice for firing a subordinate, period. Now, what about this new thing they've come up, conspiracy to defraud an election? Well, I'd like to know this conspiracy, exactly who did the president conspire with? Who is it? Have they been charged? Have they been prosecuted? Who did the president conspire with? He didn't conspire with anybody because there is no such thing. And, of course, the big enchilada, which is a sitting president cannot be indicted, which I've been saying for 18 months, which makes all of this entirely bogus. Now let's move to the Southern District of New York. They're pursuing campaign violations that did not occur. While I agree with aspects of what Professor Dershowitz said, I disagree with this. These are not crimes, period. Intent, who paid whom, doesn't matter. These are events that are not defined as campaign violations. But I would ask the geniuses in the Southern District of New York, which candidates have you or any other U.S. attorney prosecuted for violating these laws when they used private funds or corporate funds to settle a private legal matter? Can you give me one? Can you name 1, 2, 3, 4? If this is the law, I assume you've used it on a whole bunch of other people. Well, where's the case law? Because I don't see that. Now, the one area that bugs me is the New York Attorney General, who's a hack, and the DA in Manhattan, who's another hack. These are elected Democrats. So they can look at these areas too. The federal immunity on indictment doesn't necessarily apply to them. If I were the president, I'd look across the United States and I would hire the 5 or 6 toughest, smartest, most aggressive litigators in the country. I'd pull them together around my table and I would say, I want you to do everything you can to go on the offensive against these political prosecutors. I don't care if you have to drag out their cases. I don't care how many motions you have to file. It's time to go on offense against these political phony prosecutors in the state of New York and in Manhattan. Now, if you don't mind, Sean, I'd like to briefly talk about this Bruce Orr, because I think he is very, very keen. He's giving testimony.
You're doing great on your own.
Well, thank you.
That's why I love you. Go ahead.
Yeah. I view this guy, Bruce Orr, as kind of a mole, to be perfectly honest with you. He's on the staff of the Deputy Attorney General of the United States. First Sally Yates, and then Rod Rosenstein. There's a ton of questions this man needs to be asked, because he seems to be the center of the wheel. and that is what role, all roles, did he play in the production of this dossier? His relationship with Fusion GPS, where his wife worked, his relationship with Christopher Steele, the full extent of it is what we need to know. Because he clearly was a back channel for opposition research there in the United States Department of Justice. I want people to remember, the FBI director's gone. He's a leaker. He was fired. The deputy FBI director's gone. He's under criminal investigation. The Mr. Stroke, who was head of counterintelligence investigations, he was fired. Have you ever seen anything like this before? Now, in the Deputy Attorney General's office, you have a guy who is colluding with a former British spy, a foreigner, to affect our election, whose wife just happens to be working for the opposition research outfit funded by Hillary Clinton and the DNC. Stick with me because it's very simple. And they're the ones that colluded with Russia. So the question is, not only what was his role, who did he communicate with at the FBI? Who did he communicate with the Department of Justice? What did he tell Sally Yates? What did he tell Rod Rosenstein? Did he talk to Brennan? Did he talk to Clapper? Did he talk to the White House? Every single person he talked to. What media outlets did he potentially speak to? We need to know that, too. This is all very, very important. And any members of Congress did he talk to? Did he talk to Reid? Did he talk to Adam Schiff? Did he talk to any of these people? And who provided what information to whom on this dossier? Was he behind the scenes prodding along to make sure the application was written the way they wanted it to write to go to the vice court? What we're also going to be watching tomorrow is the Democrat Party. The Democrat Party is the obstruction party. Almost anarchists. They do not care if the Department of Justice was lawless. They do not care that the senior level of the FBI wiped itself out. They've been defending them. They've been special pleaders for lawlessness. That's the question.
All right, great one. Mark Levin, thank you. Mark Show, Life, Liberty, Levin, Sunday night, #1 in cable, right here, 10 p.m. on the Fox News Channel. When we come back, we'll check in with Lindsey Graham, one of John McCain's best friends.
Our hearts and prayers are going to the family of Senator John McCain. There's going to be a lot of activity over the next number of days, and we very much appreciate everything that Senator McCain has done for our country. So thank you very much.
The president earlier tonight at the Evangelical Leadership Dinner at the White House praising Senator John McCain for his unmatched service to this nation. After we learned this weekend, of course, that Senator McCain, he'd been on this program many times, agreeing and disagreeing quite often, actually. And his colleague, probably his closest friend in the Senate, Senator Lindsey Graham tweeted out, quote, "America and freedom have lost one of her greatest champions, and I've lost one of my dearest friends and a mentor." Senator Graham, I'm sorry about your loss. I really am.
Hey, thanks for what you said to me privately and what you said publicly. It means a lot to Cindy and the kids and the family to hear all these nice things said about John. So thank you.
Well, you know what? What I also tweeted was, I said, you and I have fights, political fights. And I had him with, you're right. So what? And I had him with Senator McCain. But I am proud. Yeah. I got to know his wife, Cindy, was lovely, and Megan. Yeah. And she was a former colleague, radio and TV.
You traveled everywhere with us, and those
I
were
did,
good
and I'm proud that I fought for him because he was the better choice by far.
Amen.
And what he did in Vietnam, 5 years in a POW camp, bones broken. I mean, how could you? And I know that he didn't like the president. They fought. So what?
I wish we'd had more time, but it is what it is. They fought, and so we're going to look forward. We're going to give him the send-off he deserves.
Yes.
I have cried a lot, and I am going to try to get over it. And I'm going to speak tomorrow in the Senate. His death is right by mine, and I hope I don't crack up. And I'm going to tell people what I've learned from John, and it was a lot. Perfect is not John McCain.
I remember when he came back.
Perfect is not John McCain.
Do you remember when he said,
good, decent, honorable is John
Don't
McCain.
listen to those guys on cable or talk radio. They can go straight to hell. And I'm like, okay, you didn't mind listening to me in 2008 when I was helping him. But he was a hero.
Yes, sir, he was. Well, he loved his country. If I had to pick one person in the entire country to explain America to a foreigner, it'd be John. Yeah. I mean, he had a romantic view of the nation that never died. He loved America, willing to die for it. And he could be tough on his colleagues, but the fact that everybody he was tough
that's
on,
an understatement.
Oh, my God. The stories we could tell, which we want. Yeah. But he could forgive, too.
You know, you actually said something. You're going to get mad. I'm going to bring this up. You said it to me privately. I hope you don't mind. You said, in many ways, the president and him were alike. I don't know what you meant by that.
Well, they're pretty hard-edged guys. At the end of the day, what the president said tonight, thank you. those
We put out a statement earlier today. Everyone was complaining, I guess somebody had changed the flag at half-staff, but they put it back.
John Kelly, I don't know if John's listening, he called right after John passed to the family. The president told General Kelly whatever they need, they have. We're going to look for it. We're going to talk about what does it mean for the country for John to have been in the Senate. What does it mean for us who've been around him? What can we do to build on his legacy? Where can I help the president?
Do you notice what I notice? And all these people that said, I supported John McCain in 08. I went to war for John McCain in 08.
You never called
I wanted him to win. But all these people that are like, he was the greatest. I can go verse and chapter how vicious they were to him. Is it better to be nicer in life than, like Ronald Reagan, they trashed him. Then he passes on, one of the greatest presidents. That's not what you said back then.
You know what John would say? I'll take it where I can get it. This is the same guy in 2008 who was mentally deranged. Yeah. The same guy in 2008 who ran a campaign like George Wallace. But you know what? The fact that people say good things about him now, I appreciate. But the family appreciates it. He's got a family. He's got a son who's coming back from Afghanistan. He's got a son who's been in Iraq and Afghanistan. Megyn, they all appreciate this.
Let me ask you about, you said that the president has a right to his own attorney general.
Yeah.
I agree with you. What's happened to Jeff Sessions?
Well, I like Jeff, but it ain't working. If they can't repair this relationship, and I don't see that happening, the president deserves an attorney general that he feels confident in, that can lead the Department of Justice in a more effective way.
Is it wrong that Hillary got away with the email stuff? Is it wrong that FISA courts were lied to? Is it wrong that Russian lies were paid for and disseminated to the American people? And where's Mueller?
The Hillary Clinton investigation was corrupt at its core. They liked her, hated Trump. The initial Russia investigation was corrupt at its core. The same guy in charge of clearing her was the same guy of starting the Russia investigation, Peter Strzok. I don't know why we don't have a special counsel. I can't explain that to people in South Carolina. Okay, I hope
and FISA courts, would you ever lie to a judge?
Let me tell you, where's the courts?
Would you delete subpoenaed emails?
I would tell the judge, hey, by the way, this guy's on the payroll of the Democratic Party. You ought to consider that. The bottom line, it was corrupt, and we need to fix it so we don't do it again.
But we're going after people for taxes and loan applications, not Russia.
The bottom line, if the president did not collude with the Russians, and I don't believe he did, this is just going to be a lot of noise.
Senator, I'm sorry. I know how close you are. And our thoughts and prayers to Cindy, Megyn, and the entire family.
I am better off for having known him. He loved his country, and we will be talking a lot about what he did and how there's a little John McCain in all of us. If we can bring that out, the country will be in a good spot.
Thank you, Senator. More Hannity after this.